Does Les Miles have a case against LSU? 37 vacated wins, bringing the former LSU football head coach's career winning percentage below the minimum needed to be considered for the College Football Coaches Hall of Fame. Should the university have discussed this with Miles before making this decision? Miles claims that he is seeking, quote, an appropriate remedy for the blot placed on his good name and reputation, end quote. It's a lot for the average fan to digest, and various, often opposing opinions are flying on the matter. After a quick message from our sponsor, Jeff Palermo, the news and sports director of the Louisiana Radio Network, and Tiger Rag magazine editor Todd Horne bring on legal analyst Tim Meche to share their thoughts on the situation. I'm your host, Jake McMains, and we'll be back right after this.
I think that most people that contact the 90-Day Lifeline are looking to be heard and to feel seen.
Anybody that calls here to talk about anything that has them upset, we will talk to them.
Even on our chat and text services, you will be actually chatting and texting with a real person.
We have enough resources to be able to help people in any type of situation.
We have helpline specialists that are trained to handle the variety of calls that we get.
It's a very laid-back thing. We're not judging anybody. We're just a listening ear that some people don't have.
Y'all ready? Yeah. Let's go. Come on.
Tiger Rag Radio is on the air.
Let's crank this thing up.
We're statewide, breaking down the latest happenings with LSU athletics.
This is us.
Hear from the coaches.
Put together a defense that puts us in a position to win the SEC.
The players.
Having fun and we working, baby. That's it, man.
The recruits.
Show some passion and some heart.
And those who cover the Fighting Tigers of LSU and the SEC.
All those things are going to be there, which are important.
It's 2 hours of nonstop LSU talk.
What a privilege. I mean, you get to represent LSU.
Tiger Rag Radio is brought to you by Cummins. Cummins creates power solutions that the world depends on. Helm Paint and Decorating. The paint experts of Louisiana. Louisiana Beef Industry Council. Max Home. And the East Baton Rouge Parish Library. Get ready to talk Tigers with producer Jackson Blackman and our hosts, Todd Horne and Jeff Palermo.
Three great players that are better people than they are players.
This is Tiger Rag Radio.
And good evening, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Tiger Rag Radio. Jeff Palermo, news and sports director of the Louisiana Radio Network. Tiger Rag editor Todd Horne in the studios with me, and Jackson Blackman, our producer. Todd, how you doing on this June 18th? How you doing?
Yeah, we're on June 18th, and I just want to make sure that we talk about me the whole show. Okay, this is all about me. Okay,
why do you say that?
Everything's about me. All right, because I mean, I've learned from Les Miles, that everything's about me. All right?
I sense some sarcasm in your voice.
You sense sarcasm? Really? It's all about me.
Let's break open this lawsuit filed by Coach Les Miles. When it was announced that LSU was vacating the 37 victories accumulated by the LSU football team with Les Miles at the helm between 2012 and 2015, one of the side notes to that story was, whoa, this is going to drop Les Miles' overall coaching record below 60%, his winning percentage. And in order to qualify or be eligible for the College Football Hall of Fame ballot, a coach has to have coached at least 100 games.
10 years.
10 years, and have a winning percentage of 60% or more. And Les is basically one win away.
And be 70 years old.
Be 70 years old. Okay. I didn't realize.
Yep. You have to be 70 years
but
old.
But Stoops is in.
Well, I can't. I'm just telling you what the rules say. You have to be 70. If you're active, that's if you've retired or you're no longer active.
Really?
If you're active, you have to be 75.
Okay. Because I looked up Bob Stoops and he's in.
Okay. So all
right. Let's not get sidetracked. Let's get right back on this.
I'll read it to you. The NFL that's the National Football Foundation, sets criteria for college football coaches' eligibility for nomination and admission into the Hall of Fame. Coaches must be at least 70 years old or 75 if still active, have been a head coach for at least 10 years, coached at least 100 games, and earned a winning percentage, which is the most important part of this discussion, of at least 60%. Miles' official percentage is 59.7% after LSU vacated those 37 wins from 2012 to 2015, where it shows on LSU's official record book 0 wins for all 4 of those seasons.
Okay, I don't understand how the 63-year-old Stoops is in, but
I don't either. I don't either.
but
All right.
but the one that I was
Maybe they sued the.
I don't know, but anyways, the one that I know was a fact, or the one major criteria was the 60% winning percentage, which I think is just a stupid arbitrary number. I really think it. Anytime you talk about Hall of Fame, to me, you just ask yourself: is this guy, whatever sport it may be, is he a Hall of Famer? And you don't necessarily need to dive into the statistics.
You're talking about
and all
an
that.
eye test.
The eye test.
The eye test.
I don't need to know if they won 60% of their games.
And
or
here's
not.
where you and I are going to lock horns. Surprisingly, I expect you think Les Miles passed the eye test.
Yes, because there was no other, and I understand there's all the detractors of Les Miles, that he won a bunch of lucky games. He won with Nick Saban's players. His offense was inept towards the end of his time at LSU. And I'm as you notice, I am focusing on what's happening on the field. I'm not getting into all these other things, because to me, a Hall of Fame in athletics is about what you do on the field or what your contribution is to the sport. There are a lot of bad people in Hall of Fames. We can't be the moral police when it comes to the Hall of Fame.
So your eye test is a partial look at the individual.
It's what they do on the field.
Has nothing to do with morals or ethics.
No. I mean, unless you're cheating the game, unless you're, obviously betting, or you're throwing games, or you're
paying players when you're not supposed to pay players,
which was rampant in college football at the time.
Right.
Which was,
it's been that way for
for
50
decades.
years.
For decades.
Well, it's been that way.
We were just talking about Bob Stoops. How many players at Oklahoma got paid during all those great years?
7.
I think there was a lot more than that.
I have no idea.
I think there was a lot more than that.
I have no
and
idea.
I just think when LSU averaged 10, or he averaged 10 wins a season for over a decade, I think that's, there's got to be a longevity to it, right? You just can't have like a great 3-year run. Say I don't want to even bring up Ed Orgeron, but I mean, Ed Orgeron's not going into the College Football Hall of Fame because he helped build one of the greatest college football teams.
But your criteria has to change based on the landscape of the sport, because it used to be you could be a great coach and have a sorry record because you inherited a program that it took you 5 years to rebuild. And you didn't have a winning record for 5 years, but you may have been a great coach that passed the eye test, but you still had losing records for most of those 5 seasons until you successfully rebuilt it. And then, 5 years later, you retired and you didn't have a 60% winning percentage, but you were the best coach in the country because you turned around Miami of Florida.
See, Howard Schnellenberger belongs in the College Football Hall of Fame. Schnellenberger. He belongs here. I printed out his winning percentage. Schnellenberger is 51%.
Right, it's a perfect example of what I just said.
But there is no Miami Hurricane football dynasty without him.
That's right.
And for that, and the fact that he ended up going to Louisville, a place that is very difficult to win at or have sustained success, and then he went to Florida Atlantic, so he gets punished for that. But he helped birth one of the greatest college football dynasties ever.
So, and he won a national championship.
Yes.
And
he won at Miami for 5 years. He was 41-16.
Right.
He was 5-6 his first year, and then they had kind of one year where they were 7-4, but his final year there, they won a national championship.
Well, okay. So I agree with you on Schnellenberger, and I agree with you on the arbitrary 60% number, just basically a maximum majority of or minimum majority of wins statistically. But so you feel like when LSU vacated these victories because they were caught red-handed by the NCAA and wanted to minimize, and that's what happened. This was self-imposed. LSU wanted to minimize the penalties
Right.
that were going to be imposed upon them by the NCAA. And of course, basketball, we'll get into that. That was involved in this whole leveraging thing by the NCAA. But, that takes Les Miles to 597 winning percentage with those 37 losses. They didn't even think about Les Miles. They were just talking about the fact that one of Les Miles' players' father was getting compensated, and they were caught red-handed in that. And we can go into greater detail about that. I'm sure most people know that story, but we'll go into it anyway, I'm sure, at some point. But why not Les Miles win more than 3 games at Kansas or win 3 more games at
That's
Oklahoma
unfortunate.
State?
You go to a place like Kansas where it's very difficult to win. Oklahoma State.
If you're such a great Hall of Fame coach.
That is not, but
no, it goes back to what we were just talking about, right?
It is in the world of college football where it's easier to win at some places than others. I'll give you an example. I think Mike Leach should be in the College Football Hall of Fame.
1 win shy, is that correct?
Leach, his winning percentage. I had it here a second ago. Where did I do with it? What did I do with it?
I think he's like 1 win shy.
I don't know if he's 1 win shy. Let's see. Oh, here we go. Leach is, he's about 1 win shy too. He's at 596.
Yeah. Okay.
But a COVID season where he goes 4-7, and that's what you're going to dock him for.
He should have won another game, man.
He beat LSU that year.
Yeah. Bad.
But there is no other coach in the history of college football that will have the success at Texas Tech like he did. He went 84-43 in 10 years at a place nobody wins at. Did
Mississippi State win the bowl game after he passed away? And do bowl games count? Yeah, bowl games count.
But he wasn't the coach.
Right.
He wasn't the coach. All right, let's take a break. We'll continue this conversation when we come back here on Tiger Rag Radio. All right, back here on Tiger Rag Radio, Jeff Palermo along with Tiger Rag editor Todd Horne, as we're talking about the lawsuit filed by former LSU coach Les Miles against LSU. Miles saying, or his attorney and agent saying that LSU has betrayed him by sacrificing his opportunity to enter the College Football Hall of Fame. 37 wins were taken off Les Miles' win-loss record, which dropped his winning percentage below 60%, which is the requirement needed in order for a coach to be considered for the College Football Hall of Fame. Here to talk about it, New Orleans attorney and our legal analyst on the Louisiana Radio Network, Tim Meche. Tim, thanks a lot for your time. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. Happy to be here, Jeff.
Well, it's great to have you on the show. I'm sure you took a look at the lawsuit and have read about it. Your thoughts? I feel it's a little. I think it's a long shot that he's successful with this. What's your thoughts on it?
Well, as somebody who was not necessarily a Les Miles fan, I have to say that I think it's a decent lawsuit. A lot of this will depend upon what the actual contractual obligations were between Les Miles and the university, and we don't know all of that. But it does appear, at least from the statements that have been made, that LSU indicated to Les Miles that they would not cause him harm when they were doing whatever they were doing that caused them to just forfeit all of these games that he coached to win. And if you would be that person who probably worked pretty hard to get those wins, the idea that they just kind of just made them dissolve would appear to bother you. And the idea that it could potentially at least cause him to be eligible for the College Football Hall of Fame and other things would be something that you'd try to get corrected, especially if you felt that they owed that obligation to you. So I sort of support this lawsuit, even though I'm not a big Les Miles fan.
So, Tim, this is Todd. So what I hear you saying, and one of the biggest things that I through what little research, and I'm not a lawyer or an attorney in any way, was that they're likely both LSU, well, actually LSU, the NCAA, and the National Football Foundation are likely to defend is that that Les Miles actually has no standing, lacks standing to actually file this lawsuit because they don't have to consult with him at all to resolve disputes that didn't involve him. I mean, that he was not a party to it.
Sure, Todd, but except for the fact that there was an allegation in the lawsuit and language reported in the media that there was an agreement made between Les Miles and LSU before they agreed to give up these wins, that they did something, according to the allegation of the lawsuit, to either make it up to him or there was something to that effect. And if there was that kind of side agreement, then he would have standing to sue LSU. Not the College Football Hall of Fame, of course, but LSU.
Would that, and I'm just curious now that you bring that up, would that agreement have to be in writing or could it be only verbal?
An agreement like that could be verbal if the parties agree to it and they confirm it. It's not necessary for an agreement like that as long as it didn't involve real estate to be in writing in Louisiana.
Interesting. So what about, okay, since you brought up real estate, what about property interest? Because another thing that I saw was that maybe LSU as a public university would argue that any due process protections owed to Miles were connected to his property interest, and that would have occurred only during employment, while he was in employment, under their employment, and they reached this agreement with the NCAA 2 years or 3 years after his employment had been severed. So,
yeah, I would tend to agree with that. Due process applies when the government takes away a property interest, and is the wins that they agreed to forfeit, was that a property interest? Probably not. But I don't think that's what he's alleging, that his due process rights were violated here. I think he's alleging that they had some sort of side agreement that they entered into with him, and they consulted with him and his attorney or his agent before they agreed to forfeit all those wins, and they didn't honor it, is my understanding of the lawsuit.
Well, so, and I'm just curious, I realize I'm probably getting too deep into this right now, but if that verbal agreement, if it was a verbal agreement between someone at LSU occurred in the last few months, not before they made the decision to do it, would that matter? Would the timing of that verbal agreement matter? The reason I'm saying that is because in the conversation with Ginsburg yesterday, he intimated that he had a verbal conversation with a high-ranking official at LSU who he would not name, but that conversation initiated only 3 months ago.
And that would have been after they agreed to do the thing?
Yes.
Yeah, that would be significant. That would be a factor. I don't know why he would then have filed the lawsuit if he wouldn't have had that agreement. That's interesting.
Yeah. So what is why do you not, just out of curiosity, why did you not particularly like Les Miles?
I didn't say that. I did not say that.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I was not. I guess because I'm a typical LSU fan. I mean, I was not a fan of LSU, especially in those later years. Yeah. He just never, ever, for whatever reason, had the ability to recruit, maintain, nurture, and develop a quarterback for some bizarre reason. I mean, every other box he checked, but that was his Achilles heel. And of course, that happened to be the most important position on the team. And after the Brandon, help me with his name, Brandon Jenkins was his name, I think. The last one after that turned out to be a bust.
Brandon Harris.
Brandon Harris, yeah.
Brandon Harris, yeah. I mean, that was the last straw. I mean, he was, him, Savior after Savior was going to happen. The guy from LaPlace, East St. John, and all that. But he just could never, he could never maintain these guys and develop them. And it happened to be the most important position on the team. I think the guy who came from who got kicked off the Georgia team,
Zach Mettenberger.
But that was just a year or two. I mean, he just never could recruit a freshman and maintain him and keep him all the way to senior year and develop him as a good quarterback. Am I right?
No, that's right. And his offense is never involved. I mean, that was the other big thing, that he thought he can just line up and just pitch it to the tailback and especially in the games against Alabama. It was so easy for the Crimson Tide to defend that LSU offense because there was nothing magical to it at all. It was just LSU tried to just man up on teams, and yeah, they were able to win games against lesser opponents because they were more physical and they had more athletes and better running backs, and they were able to win games like that in his last couple of years at LSU, and it was very frustrating.
Well, and if he could have managed the clock better, he would have beaten Auburn, and he would have had his one victory, and he would have still been eligible.
Yeah. No.
Or what? Or
guys, we have to ask ourselves: are we spoiled because we never saw a defense like we saw last year under Les Miles?
Yeah. Well, that's a great point. That is a great point because, had LSU had any semblance of a defense last season, they would have been in the college football playoffs and could very easily have competed and possibly won the national championship last year because they certainly had the offense and the quarterback to do that. And that may be the problem this year too, although they've dumped in, about $12 million to try and correct that problem by changing the coaching staff out. But we'll see. And if they have done something illegal and they have to vacate the wins, I'm sure Brian Kelly will be filing a lawsuit at some point in the next 5 years.
I think it's an interesting thing, and I think this is going to have an effect going forward on all of the coaches when they do their contracts with universities. And the lawyer who did Les's contract may have some liability here because a good lawyer now especially would put in that contract that before you forfeit some of my wins, I want to be consulted about it, and I want to have some say-so because this does matter to a coach, and it matters to his legacy, and I could see how that would bother somebody. So shame on that lawyer if he didn't put that in his contract before he signed it.
And I like to go back to – I wonder what the conversation was like when did they pick up the phone and say, Les, this is what we're doing. We're vacating these victories. And I do think the one thing that sticks out to me, the due process in this, did he have an opportunity to say, hey –
No.
He never had that opportunity.
That's what he says in the lawsuit, that they never reached out.
And to me, I mean, I can understand his. Now, I don't know. There's probably a good idea that there's probably, if I had to put my money on it, I think he probably knew Vidal Alexander was getting paid. But again, I think that was something that was also very rampant on every major college football campus, and those things just happen. And the college football coaches at every campus just looked the other way when those things were occurring.
And for all of the wins they forfeited, my God, this was, that's a lot of wins to just forfeit for that one person getting paid. I mean, that seems a little extreme the way they did that.
Yeah, well, that parallels exactly the number of games he started. He started all 4 of those seasons, and so the games they forfeited were the actual wins they had, the 37 wins they had during those 4 seasons. And just to clear the record, it was his father who was compensated.
Right, exactly, $180,000.
Aren't there incidents like that we know of in the past for other universities, LSU included, where stuff like that has happened and they haven't just rolled over and voluntarily forfeited that many wins?
That's a good point,
right?
Because that's part of what Les Miles and his attorney are alleging in the lawsuit, that LSU, it was self-imposed and that LSU rolled over and didn't have to do that, and they didn't consult him before they did it. So that's the basis of his claim, if you will. And it was self-imposed. LSU was trying to negotiate with the NCAA to keep the NCAA from basically giving them a penalty of lack of institutional control, which could have resulted in much stiffer penalties than they ended up getting. So they agreed to self-impose these 37 wins, vacate those 37 wins. They agreed to a 2020 bowl ban, and they agreed to scholarship limitations. And it's still going on, by the way. It's still in place for the next 2 years. Because this
and is it just for paying that one player there, and unless there was no other penalties during the whole Les Miles regime for paying any other players except this one guy?
This is the only one that they got caught on, right?
Yeah, I don't know about that.
And as his attorneys say, it was to save the basketball program.
That's what his attorneys say, but we know that LSU would value the football program more.
Yeah, but why did they? Again, this was I don't know. We just all know what was going on in college football during these years. And what happened, this wasn't for what LSU ended up doing. It's just.
Well, I know, Jeff, but if you'll remember, while this was going on, and it lasted for years.
Right. You had the sexual allegation.
Oh yeah, but I'm not even bringing that. I'm not even bringing that up yet. I'm not even going to. I don't. But
yeah,
I'm just saying,
that has no relevance to this particular lawsuit, does it? That I'm aware of.
Maybe perception-wise only, but we can talk about that in a second if we want to. But the NCAA LSU was trying to separate football and basketball in the negotiations with it, and the NCAA wouldn't let them. All right, and so LSU was basically, in my opinion, and this is my opinion only, trying to do whatever they could to save football from getting penalized harshly.
And that was a loss of institutional control allegation?
That was hovering over the entire.
Well, help me refresh my memory too. You also had the whole Odell Beckham paying players right after the national championship game. Wasn't that?
Well,
wasn't the NCAA also looking at that?
That, as well as the Darius Geis.
Yeah.
And that's where the sexual stuff kind of comes in.
Right.
You know.
Hey, I got an idea. Let's just throw Les Miles under the bus and solve all our problems, right? Nobody likes him anyway. Hey, come on, let's just do that. I mean, it's great to have him in it. Great. Wouldn't that be great to have you in your back pocket just in case? Hey, there's Les Miles. We'll throw him out. Yeah. Oh, poor Les, man.
Well, what I will say is there were and I know, as you mentioned, Tim, being an LSU fan, the last few years were very frustrating. It was maddening at times.
Painful, yeah.
To watch that LSU offense. But there were also there were some just fun games, some unbelievable moments. A lot of it were kind of self-imposed in a way because he wasn't the greatest game manager, if you would. And it's a shame that you basically have 3 national championship coaches involving LSU, and LSU wouldn't want to touch any of them with a 10-foot pole. It's what's kind of ironic about this in a way. I think the one guy that maybe LSU might get a little more cozy with than the 3, I think it will be Nick Saban. Because I really think in 2028, when they celebrate that 25th anniversary of the 03 national championship game, Nick Saban will be in Tiger Stadium with the rest of those players.
Well, there's still some people who we are very close to, who still think Nick Saban may finish his career coaching college football at LSU.
Oh, come on. I love it. Well, they brought Paul Diesel back to be athletic director. Remember that? So,
Tim,
maybe Nick can take that job.
Tim, we're way late for a break. We got to take it. Thanks for your analysis. We appreciate it. Thanks again for your time and all your efforts with us.
Join in summer fun at your library. Every Friday in June at 7 p.m., families are invited to the main library on Goodwood for Movies on the Plaza. Teens can participate in our Cool Career Series and Teen Summer Film Camp. Plus, there'll be children's programs galore. Find out how to sign up for EBRPL Summer Reading Program at ebrpl.com/summer reading. ebrpl.com/summer reading.
All right, that'll be it for today's episode. I'd like to thank Jeff, Todd, and Tim for the discussion. We'll be back later, but until then, stay tuned to TigerRag.com for all your latest LSU sports news.